All right. So I want to recap this because we're about to move into estate planning questions because we're getting short on time. So, recap is first of all, you need to know what a good deal is when you're buying property. So, with that good deal, once you've discovered that, you've got a contract, a purchase sale agreement, agreement for sale, contract. That's outlining who's buying, who's selling, what you're buying it for, and if there's any contingencies and what money you're putting down as good faith called earnest money.
Hmm.
If you're putting earnest money down, that's going to either a realtor or an attorney,
Hmm.
which is the safest two options. If you hand it straight to the buyer, there's always that risk of them running off with your money.
Hmm.
All right. So then once you get it contracted and you do whatever due diligence you were going to do, you're passing that over to your real estate attorney. If you didn't already have one involved with the earnest money, they're doing title search, making sure you're getting good, clean title. And then at closing, you're going to see a HUD, which breaks down who's getting what according to what money. And then they're going to file a warranty deed on your behalf as the buyer. So that is now actually recorded that it's your property. And then if you had any type of financing or loans, there's also going to be a deed of trust involved as well.
Hmm.
So we have moved through the next 20 years and we've acquired a nice little portfolio. And we've also got our income that we've been making with trading our time because maybe real estate investing was a side hustle.
Hmm.
What do I do to protect myself? And we hear this term called estate planning. What does that mean and why do we want to do that?
Well, estate planning certainly, but I want to cut right before that. Hopefully, as a real estate investor, most of your property along the way has been in an LLC or multiple LLCs. So, first of all, if especially if it's multi-member LLCs, make sure those operating agreements that you have are very clear about what happens at the death of the first member. That all goes to the other member. If it's a situation where it's not a husband and wife, like my situation, that maybe, how property will be valued and how the partner can buy out the family of the other person. Those are things, especially when you're having partnership LLCs with people you're not, legally bound to otherwise through marriage or otherwise. You want to have those conversations at the front end, get that all in the operating agreement. So that being the case, for assuming you've got the bulk of the property in those LLCs. Now, you've also got to deal with all of your personal assets and make sure all of that is transferred in a way that you want. And there's so many different ways to do that, from the very simple to the very complex. But tying that all back in, something that a lot of people like to do, if you're a situation like myself and say you've got a husband and wife that they have X number of LLCs that holds their property, and they're like, well, okay, my kids are getting grown. I need to start thinking about things, and I've got different things to think about than I had to when they were young. A lot of people, and again, every situation is different. It may not be the best thing for everybody, but a lot of people, they'll set up a holding company that holds each of their LLCs, and then that holding company maybe is held by a trust. And then that trust is the owner of that single member LLC that holds all the other companies. Well, if you do that, and this again is just, something that some people do, that trust agreement sets the terms for what happens to that property. And then your simple will could maybe just pour everything over into that trust, so that if and when the time comes, maybe you don't even have to go through the probate process if all goes well. You've got this trust document that sets up the terms. If you've built up a lot of money, hopefully for your children, grandchildren, maybe even beyond that, maybe for some charities, different, very specific things that you can name. And there's a lot of different benefits to doing that. We don't have time to get into all of that, but once you get to a big enough level, that may be something you want to consider. Alternatively, you may just want to have a simple will that says, this is what happens to all of my, maybe it all goes to my spouse. And if my spouse predeceases me or we die simultaneously, it all goes to my children. Simple as that. You're talking about a 2 or 3 page document. And technically, in Mississippi, the laws of intestacy are such that's what would happen anyway. But I do find that, especially now, we've got more, you got blended families, you've got business partners, you've got lots of moving parts. And that's why a lot of people do like the benefit of a trust. I don't always recommend trust for people because sometimes that's just overly complicated. But in the realm that you're talking about with real estate investors that hopefully have built up a pretty big portfolio, that may be a model that they want to at least consider. And it all is going to come down to what their tax consequences may be. And the one thing you can be sure, well, there's two things you don't know. A, when you're going to die. and B, what the estate tax situation is going to be when you die, because it changes year to year, administration to administration. There's a time it was a million, there was a time it was unlimited. Now you're somewhere around 5 million. It's every year. So I'd say most of the people I see, they're not worried about the estate tax, right? But the whole goal of the people watching this is they want to be in that realm that maybe they are. And so
Right.
they've got some things to think about that the general public maybe doesn't so much. Maybe the general public has a house and, some special keepsakes that they want to make sure goes to a specific grandchild. That's a different scenario than $10 million worth of real estate in 5 different LLCs. It's a whole different situation. And so everybody that has spent their lifetime building something up like that, they definitely want to take the time to think through what they want to happen first at the first death, if you've got a spouse, and then at the second death. And that's just something that you've got to think through. And in particular, though, the biggest thing that you can do in those LLCs, if hopefully you're holding your real estate, there's for liability and tax purposes, there's a lot of reasons why your CPA and your attorney are probably going to advise you to do that. Have those operating agreements, kind of map out what happens. Even if it's a husband and wife LLC, have another layer of protection so that hopefully if something happens to one of the members, nothing has to stop. You're not having it, you don't want to have all of that real estate and it take 3 or 4 months to get in front of a judge to get the authority to get into the accounts that do all
Right.
that. There's just no reason for that. And so there's lots of different things that can be done ahead of time if people it's an unpleasant thing to think about. But if you just think about it a little bit, every year or two, it will be a big relief to your family and the people you leave behind. And hopefully you will leave behind a legacy that they will be really proud of.
Yeah. You just never know when the time's going to be. So
None,
now is the time to do this.
none of us
Now
know.
is the time. Yeah. All right. So tell us what the name of your, I want to say
My
establishment, but your office. There we go.
establishment sounds like a bar. Yeah. No, it is Harrison Law Office, PLLC. We're here in Tupelo. We're at the corner of Magazine and Church, right behind Calvary Baptist Church in the former Family Resource Center. So we've got a huge 6,800 square foot building that we got plenty of room and lots going on. And we love taking care of people, helping them solve their problems to the best of our ability.
How do people reach out to you outside of just driving by your place? How do they get in
Well,
contact?
the best thing to do would probably be reach out and see if they need an appointment. And that would just be call our office at 662-269-3543 and choose the option for reception or appointments. And they'll go through kind of a screening process and figure out, which attorney you need to talk to. We have another attorney here that does a lot of different things. Or if it's a real estate matter or an estate planning matter. And so they can make sure and hook you up with the appropriate person that can talk to you and just, we'll try to help you as best we can. If for some reason it's something we don't do, we usually try to at least give you some information where you can go for help. We hate for people to leave handed. If it's something we can't help with, we'll try to send them somewhere where they can get some help.